Okay, here we go. Welcome to the March 25th School Board meeting. This meeting is now in session. I'd like to share that both Ms. Van Dorn and Dr. Cannon are participating electronically from their homes in Arlington to help minimize the risk of exposure to the coronavirus for themselves, their families, and the community. If we continue to meet in person, which we are trying to not do, we will rotate through board members to support that. But I want to say good evening to everyone to start with, and to thank the community for their support. I know that these are very difficult times for us in being alive during the time of the coronavirus pandemic, and this is something that will go down in the history books, and so we are that generation that will survive this. And I share that because I think that we are here this evening trying to have a board meeting, and the audience is empty, and we're missing 2 board members, and our ELT is working from home. Well, we're not missing them, but they're at home. And it just really makes it very real and sombering what we're living through. And I have to expect that that's happening for all of our families and staff in Arlington. You're home, you're working, maybe you're not able to work because you don't have the flexibility or opportunity for teleworking. You're trying to support your students in their education. And I just want you to know that on behalf of the board, we're doing everything we can to support our superintendent as she works with her staff to ensure that we're doing everything we can to support your children, our students, and our families. I wish I had words of comfort, and I wish I could tell you that this will be over soon. But I don't know when that will be. I don't think any of us do. And we just ask that you work with us and support us so that we can support you in getting our families and our students through this very difficult time, and ensuring that when we come out of this, we're able to provide them the best experience and education and support that we can. So I'm going to now go into our announcements. First, I want to share that I did forget to do the pledge. Thank you all. We can still do it, and I realized that we should have started with that. So thank you both. So I'm going to ask everyone to rise for the pledge, and the flag is behind us. Okay. Let's go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. So, thank you to my colleagues for reminding me on the pledge. It's always difficult to be working in different circumstances. You lose your routine. But I do want to make some announcements. Again, I just want to extend our commitment to ensuring that we are doing everything we can to support our families and students during these difficult times. I also want to share that this will likely be the last in-person meeting that the school board will be having for the foreseeable future. We are working with our legal counsel to determine how to have regular virtual meetings for the school board, but under the current law and Attorney General's opinion that was issued, we are able to have virtual meetings to address the emergency at hand and to address anything that could have irreparable harm to the system. So we will be meeting virtually at this time on April 16th to address any new budget developments and any contracts that we have pending. We're hoping to have better guidance so that if more things can be done in that meeting, we will do so. And I want to share now that our schedule is really subject to change, and it's been changing daily. We originally had a public hearing scheduled for this evening. But we are canceling we have canceled that public hearing because we understand that the economic conditions that we thought existed are no longer the case due to the coronavirus update. So later this evening, we will be acting on a new budget direction that will replace the approved budget direction we provided in October. We also canceled the work session yesterday, and we are canceling the work session on March 31st and the April 2nd school board meeting. So again, our next school board meeting at this time is April 16th. We also wanted to share some additional changes that were made to tonight's agenda. So generally, we have agenda items provided that come forth to us for information, and then at the next board meeting, we act on them. But because we are in these unprecedented times and in these special circumstances, we are bringing what we can forward for info action this evening or acting upon it on consent without having heard it for information, because many of these things are timely. So to the extent possible, we will be doing that at our virtual meetings as well. If they are, again, things that we have to act on that have a deadline that we have to meet, like contracts. And we apologize for that, but we are doing everything we can to post things in advance on our school board docs. Tonight is a special situation since we were not sure when we'll be able to meet again. So the additional changes that have been made to tonight's agenda include moving the Perkins grant forward on consent and bringing the special education plan forward for information and action. Originally, the special education plan was scheduled for information tonight and then action at the April 2nd school board meeting, but we have canceled that meeting, so we'll be bringing it for information and action tonight to ensure that both documents are approved and submitted to the state on time. I also wanted to share that at the current time, we are not accepting public comment at our meetings. We are working to develop a new meeting format that will allow public participation while also complying with public gathering and social distancing recommendations in place. So as we move forward to the virtual meetings, if we can do virtual meetings and have regular board items, we'll be working on developing and working with our staff to figure out how to take public comment virtually. But for the immediate future, we are only having board meetings to act on emergency items that have a deadline that would cause irreparable harm to our system if we don't act on them. So I share that because in this transition phase, we will not be taking public comment, and if it becomes a longer term than what we're hoping it is, we're looking at ways to be able to start that back up again. But however, until this public comment process is developed, if you would like to provide input to the board on a meeting agenda item, we ask that you please send your comments to school.board@apsva.us. And please state in the subject line that your message is being submitted for the public record of the board meeting. When you do this, it is like your public comments and they go into the meeting's records and will be referenced in the minutes. We also, and I also want to share that any documents provided in this way will be entered again into the public record, but they're also subject to the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act. And finally, we ask that you watch for additional scheduled changes, which will be posted on our website and shared through School Talk and other social media outlets. And I'm sure that many of you would like an update on what we are doing during this pandemic, and the superintendent will be providing that during our superintendent updates. Colleagues, are there any announcements or statements you would like to make for the community at this time? Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to share that, you know, I'm in touch with a lot of community members, and I have heard nothing but universal praise from them for the way that we are doing our continuity of instruction, continuity of operations. Everybody has been very, very complimentary about the way the teachers have been pushing instructional materials to the students at home, and also their responsiveness in being available for, you know, help and extra responding to questions and things like that. So I just want to make note of that, say thank you to the superintendent and, you know, all of the staff for pivoting so completely, with such high quality in this given such a sudden and dramatic change in the way we do business. So it's just another dimension of what a high-quality system we are. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Ms. O'Grady.
I'll take an opportunity to add on to Mr. Goldstein's comments. I too want to thank the community for your hard work, your being open to in this time of transition, change, and ever evolving situations. I also want to thank our staff. I have seen such incredible things through Twitter and other ways encouraging kids to continue to keep on learning and reading. Whether that's school-based staff, the staff at central office has been incredibly creative, from Wendy Pilch reading books that kids can listen and learn with, and all other sorts of things. And I am also really moved by members of our community reaching out to support our families and our students, and also being supportive of our staff. So this is a really tough time for really the whole world, but it does make you really understand what a great place we live in and how a community can come together in a time of need and uncertainty. So keep it up, Arlington. I think we are doing a good job supporting one another, and we're going to continue to try to serve our students in the best way possible. Thanks again to staff and our families.
I also want to give an opportunity, Dr. Cannon and Ms. Van Doren, who are participating with us electronically. Ms. Van Doren, would you like to make any comments or announcements?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Can you?
Okay, great. Can you see me?
No, not yet.
You should be able to see me. Maybe I have to speak up. Maybe it comes up
Well, we
as,
can hear you. There you are.
Okay, so hi, everybody. First, I wanted to apologize. Not so much apologize as to acknowledge that I can't be there. I have one child with a suppressed immune system and other children with asthma. And as with the protocols that we've been given, I have to be extremely careful about that. And I know there are other families out there who are being extra diligent, and this is the effect of doing that. So I'm sorry I can't be there, but I think you all understand. And I think the board is providing, showing leadership by abiding by the rules to the extent we can. We've got some very strict guidelines from the state, and that's a long story, but hopefully we can deal with that. I also wanted to mention that I know, and I've heard and seen and shared on various listservs, the struggles families are having with this. It's very hard to work at home and have your kids working at home. And I know it's a struggle. I have 3 college kids at home who are all in a very small house trying to do their independent work and stay up on their courses in order to graduate. So I know how hard that is. And I know that our staff is working diligently to try to, especially now that we know the school year is going to continue this way, to figure out ways to regularize this so that we can get a handle on it. And I just want to acknowledge that I hear that, and I hear the frustrations, and I hear the struggles. But I do know that our staff is listening, and I'm sure Cynthia will reinforce this, but communicating with your teachers and your principals so that they can incorporate that feedback is extremely helpful, because while I may read it online, the front line, the first person is the teacher and the principals. And if they have that feedback, perhaps they can adjust what they're doing to make it more effective for your child and your children. Okay, so I'm going to enjoy the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. Dr. Cannon?
Sure. Well, I think a lot's already been said. I've also been impressed at how well and quickly our staff was really able to launch this full sort of virtual education system. So I know there's a lot more that's going to kick in now that we have the certainty of the entire rest of the academic year being online, that there's going to be continuous work to do better and better connecting with our students. But it's really been a successful launch. And so congratulations to everyone. I know people worked really hard. And I think the one last thing that hadn't been mentioned yet that needs to is just to acknowledge how devastated we all are. hearing of how teachers miss their students already, and seniors who are missing all those special moments of the end of the school year. And of course, we could go on and on with the list. It's really, really tough for everyone, and heartening to see how much teachers care and are expressing that to their students. But it's certainly a devastating time. We're all still adjusting to that as well. And so, we're all, again, going to do as much as we can to make sure all of our students and families are supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kennan. I do want to just say one additional thing. I want to take an opportunity to thank my board and our superintendent for the support that has been provided to myself as chair in managing unprecedented administrative matters for our board, but also the support that they have offered our interim superintendent. We always hear about different comments about how boards operate, but I will say that during this crisis, our board has come together. And the leadership and the teamwork that has been shown, I believe, is extraordinary. And I would not be able to pull off what we are pulling off without your support. And I know in my daily conversations with our interim superintendent that she has repeatedly expressed the same sentiment. And so I wanted to share that with all of you and with the public to know that your school board is working very hard together to do what we can to get us through this the best way possible, and that we are doing everything we can to support our interim superintendent, who is also working very hard with her ELT and her staff to get us through this so that we all come out of this well, healthy, and ready to go back to some type of normalcy. And I just wanted to say that to you all. So thank you. Thank you all for your leadership. What a time to be a leader in our community. So I don't think any of us expected this during our tenure. And Ms. Johnson, for leading us on an interim basis. I'm sure this is not something you anticipated, but your leadership and your strength and the support that you've given your staff has been extraordinary, and I just want to say thank you. So we are now going to hear the interim superintendent. Oh, and I apologize. There's one more person that I rarely say thank you to publicly, but would be completely impossible, and I mean that by every definition that is out there on the word impossible, to make this happen, and that is our school board clerk, Melanie Elliott, and her team. What they have done behind the scenes to get us through this has been phenomenal. So I really just want to thank you, Melanie, and your team. Really, if you all could see the work that's happening behind the scenes to make us run during these periods where we are not running the way we should be, is really, really extraordinary. So we will now hear the interim superintendent's announcements and updates. Ms. Johnson, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, good evening. And I talk a lot about uplifting messages and uplifting words, and I have to say thank you very much to the board. I have felt the support, and I'm most appreciative of it. So I do want to acknowledge that publicly. We are in this together. These are challenging times, but it is amazing how people rise to the occasion during the most challenging times. So community members, thank you. To my staff, it's been phenomenal, and I thank you as well. And we'll see some staff members presenting a little bit later on, but I'd like to ditto the comments that have been made and just extend my appreciation to the school board. So what has us at this place is the coronavirus. So I'd like to give a little bit of an update on where we are and how we have started making adjustments to our plans due to the news on Monday. So as you all know, Governor Northam announced that all K-12 schools will be closed for the remainder of the school year, and this is as a safety measure due to the coronavirus. As you've heard this evening, it is a hardship that many are facing, and there are many emotions for our families and our students. We want to acknowledge that and support it as we continue this journey, and I'm confident that we'll move forward and continue to support our students. I have been in daily contact with Northern Virginia superintendents and working collaboratively with our leadership team here in APS to make decisions on how to best serve our students for the remainder of the year. We are following guidance that's provided to us by the Virginia Department of Education, and that's the information that we'll be using to develop our plans. So on this slide, I just want to share a couple of reminders pertaining to the continuity of learning, the distant learning we have in place. Teachers will continue to engage in distance learning through Friday, April the 3rd, as planned. Again, Friday, April the 3rd is planned. The adjusted end for the third quarter was March the 20th. Spring break will proceed as planned. That's from April the 6th through the 10th. And then April the 13th on our calendar was a grade prep day. And so I just want to acknowledge that that stands. After that, APS will resume instruction on Tuesday, April the 14th, with adjustments to our distant learning model, and that'll be announced to the families next week. Those plans are being finalized now and being shared with our advisory committees so that we can get input on ways to share these plans with our families. While we are working through our plans based on the extended closure announced, I have updates on a few key areas based on state guidance. So we are currently exploring ways to celebrate our class of 2020. These students have worked hard and have been looking forward to this moment for years. So we want to make sure that they're honored and that we celebrate this monumental achievement. So once a plan is finalized, we'll be reaching out, and our plans are our efforts are in line with seeking input from our students and our families. Special education teachers are connecting with students and their parents via virtual video check-ins to check their students' well-being, assure them their teachers are thinking about them, and provide support as necessary. I know families have questions about how grading will be addressed during the closure. We are developing a plan to ensure that it is fair and equitable for all students based on guidance being given to us by VDOT, and we'll communicate it when we have a little bit more details. The May 2020 IB examinations have been canceled, but students still have to complete the required assessments. Students will have to take their AP test online in place of the traditional face-to-face test. The College Board will release the AP test schedule April the 3rd, and we'll be working with our families and our students. SOLs have been canceled for this year. The VDOE is applying for a waiver from the U.S. Department of Education. So not having to take SOLs this year takes some pressures off our students and allows them to focus on the instruction and essential skills during the closure. And that will be further explained in the plans that will be provided to families. I wanted to provide an update on the grab-and-go meal distribution. We are committed to ensuring our families have access to food and other resources during this time. On March the 16th, we began serving free grab-and-go breakfast and lunch for children ages 2 to 18. We started at Kenmore Middle School and Drew Elementary. Today was the first day of expanding the locations, so we have 3 additional grab-and-go sites at Barrett, Campbell, and Randolph Elementary Schools. Meals are served at all 5 locations from 11 a.m. to 1, Monday through Friday. To date, we've served 10,034 meals, just over 1,200 each day. Today, we added the 3 sites. We were able to serve 736 more meals to 368 additional families in total. Drew, Kenmore, and Barrett served the most students today, and we will see how it evolves to respond to the needs. I will share that, this week we've also had been impacted by the weather. We will continue this plan through this week, and since we will not be serving during the week of spring break, we have a plan to provide families who come the Friday before spring break with the meals for the following week. So we're currently evaluating plans for food distribution. We'll do that through the remainder of the year, make adjustments as we need to, and continue to also follow the guidance that we're getting from the state. So I do want to extend my sincere appreciation to food service workers who have been coming in to prepare the foods for these students, as well as the APS leadership team and administrators who are volunteering at each of our sites. We also want to thank the PTAs, our community partners, nonprofit organizations, and businesses who are supporting families through meal distribution and food drives. We have them listed on our websites, so feel free to refer to them. We want to continue to work on ensuring that we're staying connected during the closure. So I want to remind everyone, we are working hard to continually keep our families informed and engaged. As you can see on the slide, we are communicating as quickly and as frequently as possible when new information is available. Teachers are also in regular contact with families to maintain connections and response to needs. You heard comments from our school board members about that earlier. With that being said, we are in uncharted territory and are forging a new path in instruction. The transition to distant learning and telework has made it easier for continuous contact at any time of the day. So I'm asking everyone to please try to manage the contacts with the teachers and staff with respect to the work hours and the systems that we have for communicating and how that's being made available to our families. If you have questions about the closure and our plans, please do email them to engage@aps.us. We are maintaining frequently asked questions on COVID-19 webpage, and it's being updated multiple times a week based on the incoming questions and developments. So again, if you have questions that haven't been addressed, please feel free to contact us. We know there are many questions, and we will respond as soon as we have the answer. Families are juggling teleworking and learning at home, and none of this is easy. So we are here to help. Lastly, take care of yourself and your families, and please, please continue to practice social distancing, frequent hand washing, and other preventive measures. I will continue to highlight the many bright spots and examples of caring and supporting students in our school community during this period that we are closed. Times like these remind me just how wonderful our staff and teachers are, and we are truly a community of learners and carers, people who care. I have been impressed by the many ways families and staff are coming together and finding creative ways to support families who need it the most, to make learning fun, and to lift the spirits of our students. So many of our schools, secondary and elementary, are holding virtual Spirit Week. So I hope you're able to check some of that out, and that's to maintain a sense of community and school pride. So on the slide, you see an example of Yorktown's Hawaiian Shirt Day. At Barcroft Elementary, every teacher has been assigned a student to check in and stay connected with. At Randolph, the PTA held a food drive to support the students. At Washington Liberty, teacher Ryan Miller began a show in partnership with ABC 7, Channel 7, to introduce students to weather and lessons outside the classroom. And our wonderful SROs are not only out helping at the food distribution sites, but started a read aloud on Facebook for students. Yorktown teacher Carol Cadby organized the virtual classroom so that her students can share one-person plays via video and receive classmate feedback. So I hope people will continue to see the positive types of activities that are taking place. Here is our school board action plan, and we continue to do our work. We have been thrilled to have our new Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Aaron Gregory. He's started his work in January, and I want to just give you a little bit of a brief overview of the work he's been doing since his arrival. His main priorities have been mapping out a 30, 60, 90-day work plan, taking on a listening tour, so he's available to learn and listen and to become familiar with APS, our policies, community, and key issues that need to be addressed. He has been working with ELT, our executive leadership team, on equity, and he's considering the staffing and budget that's needed as we continue to do our work around equity. So some highlights to share with you about Aaron's activities to date. He's been working with the APS leadership to build our capacity to become more critically race-conscious educators. Since he's joined us, his listening tours with internal and external stakeholders has been ongoing, and he's adding to this engagement by developing a web page and social media presence. He's done 16 visits to date. He's been reviewing policies, specifically the equity policy. He is developing APS equity levers, and levers are the organizational initiatives or actions that we can undertake in order to drive the desired impact. So he's got a special tool that is research-based, evidence-based research tool that's used to calibrate the system's current climate, instructional practice, etc. So he will continue to do as much work as he can virtually, as many of us are doing at this time. And I just want to end by sharing a little bit of an update on our 2021 budget. Our schedule is changing in terms of the work on the 2021 budget. On February 27th, I presented the superintendent's proposed budget, and the board has had 3 work sessions. But we want to let the community know that we are going to make some schedule changes as a result of the current state of affairs. So you'll notice that there have been meetings that are canceled as we begin to develop the new budget. So please stay tuned. Again, thank you to all the members of the community.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your update. And I just, as you have this slide up, I want to just share that the April 2nd school board meeting has been canceled, and the school board's proposed budget has been postponed to a date to be determined. Due to the changing economic situation in our community, we are going to have to, as Ms. Johnson stated, redevelop our budget calendar. So we are postponing that, but we do not have a new date. And I just want to make reference to the April 3rd joint work session that we have scheduled with the county. We have not decided whether that will be held yet. And I also want to take this opportunity, so we will leave that as tentative, and we will likely have more information on that next week. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank the county. We have been working closely with them and in regular communications to ensure that we're all staying informed and able to support each other to the best of our ability during these difficult times. And so I just want to acknowledge that. But I did want to just make reference to those 2 dates. And as far as the other 2 dates in April, we're keeping them on until we determine what the new calendar will be, as everyone has those times reserved on the school board and with the superintendent and ELT. And so we're asking them to hold those times, as they may need to become a public hearing or another board meeting or a different type of work session or presentation. We just don't know exactly how we're going to be able to move work forward under the current constraints of what we can do virtually. So we're working through that, and we ask again for your patience. And thank you again, Ms. Johnson, for the presentation. And I do want to open up the floor to my colleagues for questions and comments. Ms. O'Grady, I'll start with you. Do you have any for Ms. Johnson?
No, I just wanted to say how lovely it was to see the compilation of all the different things happening for the students, and to thank you for, I just think that that's really inspiring at this time. So I wanted to say thank you for that, and I wanted to thank you for the work on helping to ensure our students have meals. And I know that we are constantly looking at that. And I know that the community is very engaged in ensuring that all of our children are at least being fed at this uncertain time. And so I appreciate the community's input and conversation and concern about that. And I want to thank our staff for being away from their families at this time, when I know some of them may have their own children at home and and concerns about their health, to come out to ensure that our own students can be fed. I know that that's probably weighing in their minds as well. So just wanted to thank you for that information.
Mr. Goldstein.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to say how tremendously impressed I am with what you showed us about, this slide, with the creativity that's coming from the staff and the community. As we try and get our arms around the new situation here, the virtual reading of stories and the virtual spirit day and the staff who are contacting every student. I mean, it's just incredible how that creativity's been unleashed, helped along by the technology we have. I just, want to recognize that. I do have a question for you on one of the things that you, in your announcement, and that was the canceled SOLs. And so how will the canceled standards of learning tests impact SOL completion requirements? Most acutely for seniors this year, but also in the future, if a student has taken a required SOL course, but that exam's been canceled this year, what's going to happen?
So I'll start, and I know that Bridget Loft is on as well, so she might want to chime in. But I will share that we are looking at what students have learned to date, and the SOL is just one measure for students. And so in light of the fact that we have decided to close schools and not had the opportunity to complete the process for, SOL testing, and will not have the pathway to ensure that, again, this is an equity issue as well, because these are state-wide mandates, that decision was made. There are going to be a number of different options, which is part of the plan that I think DTL is working on in terms of trying to maintain that continuity of learning. We simply will not have the SOLs needed to measure that learning.
Okay, so, I mean, a lot of what I heard is stand by. We're getting more information, but those people who are taking a required SOL course, required for graduation, say algebra or English 11 or something, we're just going to check that box for them because they have taken the course, even though they didn't actually take the SOL exam?
That is correct, but I'm going to have Bridget chime in if she's available and would like to comment.
Hi, this is Bridget Loft. The VDOE is seeking waivers to waive the requirements of federal accountability measurements. And so it's our expectation that what we know is a verified credit, which at this point, up until March, when schools were closed for the rest of the year, was a student had to pass the course and pass the SOL. It is likely that students will no longer need to take the SOL as part of that verified credit requirement.
And I will add one more thing. I think we're going to look closely at where students are now. So they're going to get the credit if they are in good standing up through the third grading period. And then part of the plan that we're developing is looking at ways to provide students with the necessary support for them to be able to have completed that course successfully. So that will be part of the plan that will be rolled out.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kennan, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, just one quick question. A few community members have asked me if there's any possibility that schools will open kind of very late in June and kind of have an extended session, and just want to see if there's clear guidance on that so that we can just answer that for community members. Is there any possibility that schools could be sort of reopened and extending this school year at this point?
We are giving a lot of thought to what the opportunities are that we need to create for our students for that continuity of learning. I think at this point we're looking at what we need to do through the end of the year, but as was shared earlier, we know that there are going to be students that need support. What will that support look like, and what are our plans over the course of the summer? Again, at this point, we're in the process of developing it, but when you ask about whether or not there'll be opportunities for students to access learning during the summer, we are exploring that. To what degree and whom it would apply to, that's part of the process that's being developed at this time. There are a number of options that have been given to school systems, locality, as a result of the VDOE guidance.
But to clarify what you said, you're exploring opportunities, but not the idea of reopening school for the end of the year for everyone.
I just want to make sure, because I'm not hearing everything that you're sharing. Reopening schools for everyone during the summer months?
Yeah, that's just been a question community members have asked me, if there's any possibility school will actually reopen at the, and to have an extended session this year. And I don't think we're contemplating that, but I just wanted to confirm that.
Not at this point, but I will make note of it, and I think as we've seen and heard, things continue to evolve and change. I think the key measure for us is we want to ensure that students have opportunities to be successful in light of the change in the calendar for this year. So we are going to be looking at ways to provide those opportunities for students. I don't have the specificity now, but we'll be exploring that. But it's unknown at this time about what the summer plans will be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cannon. Any other, Ms. Van Doren, do you have any other questions? Do you have any questions or comments?
No, just I know I've had this conversation with Cynthia, Ms. Johnson. The sooner that we provide some structure and normalcy in this new environment, the better. And I think helping families put the schoolwork in perspective and realize that, having the appropriate expectations of what they're supposed to accomplish at home, having some guidelines, and the focus on, first is on caring for your children and your family, and then doing what you can, and then providing some kind of structure. I hope that will be forthcoming, and it sounds like it will be, but I know this is hard for everybody. So thank you for that. Thanks, Cynthia, for the report.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. I did have a couple of questions, Ms. Johnson. On slide 2, I just noted that you mentioned graduation. And I don't know if we can pull up the slide, but I think you had just said we're doing what we can to support our seniors and figure out ways that maybe we can celebrate them and their accomplishments. And I wanted to thank you for that. I know that I had heard from a couple of parents whose seniors were devastated that they're not going to have the experiences that are milestones for our children in high school. And I know that we are, and I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for working with your team to see what can be done. We don't know when and we don't know how, but we're looking to see what we can do. And I just wanted to say thank you, that I truly support that. I know it's been devastating, as has been said multiple times. I also want to, again, thank you for all the work that you and your staff are doing to help ensure that our students have access to food. I know that is very challenging during these times, as even people have fears who have to come to work. The stress of just being a worker during times where other people are not working, and the ability to not be able to work from home. And that really is across all industries, that there are workers who are out there that are doing things for us, and they have to manage their risk, and they don't have a choice. So I know that we have food service workers out there, and our staff coming there to oversee that and putting themselves out there for our community. And I just remind the community to practice social distancing, even when you're doing your food pickup, to try to honor that space and do what you can to support our workers as we try to support you. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that you're doing there.
Thank you.
Finally, I did just have feedback for you and Ms. Loft on the verified credit for the SOLs. I appreciate the waiver that's been provided, and I just ask that if you have an opportunity to work with the Department of Education, that you share with them that, you know, this doesn't just affect our seniors, but it affects all 4 years of high school. So we have freshmen who are not able to take an SOL, and I worry about a mandate in later years that they're now taking 3 SOLs in 1 year because they're trying to make up for 1. So to the extent that if they're doing some type of waiver or something that allows any person who passes this class to get the verified credit and exempt the SOL for this particular year across the board, that would be helpful. And just provide feedback, because a lot of times they only think about those who are graduating, and of course that makes sense. But I just want to make sure we're remembering all of our students, because I don't want to put undue stress on students having to go back to school next year, recovering from this crisis, and then all of a sudden having multiple tests put on them because of this particular waiver this year.
So I really appreciate you bringing that forward, because in the VDOE guidelines that we're receiving, they really they are looking at those plans with seniors in mind, and then 8th through 11th grade, and then elementary. So we are using that information along with, I think, the collaborative work with other localities to develop our plans as well. But I think that's an important point that has not been lost at all by the guidance we're getting from VDOE.
That's excellent to hear. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for sharing that. Colleagues, any other questions or comments for Ms. Johnson on her update? Okay. I also want to, I apologize, I did not have my remarks written, so as we're having this conversation, different things are coming to mind, but I wanted to, again, thank the county for working, for the collaboration that we are having with them. I wanted to say thank you to that. But I also, one thing I didn't address in our in this conversation thus far is our advisory committees. I know that we have a lot of advisory committees who were planning to meet are not now able to meet. And we, as we develop our electronic, our e-meeting and virtual electronic meeting guidance, I will be asking about our advisory committees, because I know many of them are also have to abide by the FOIA law, which also would, by that virtue, possibly prevent them from meeting electronically. So I just want to acknowledge that we are looking at it from that angle as well, and we'll provide as much guidance as we can, and ask that my colleagues also help remind me as we go through those conversations that we're getting guidance for advisory committees, so that we can help them support us. And finally, the other thing I didn't address is open office hours. So I think that for the next 30 days, we're still trying to get a handle of the transition and how we're going to be managing future meetings and so forth. But once that's stabilized, I want to say thank you to my school board, to our school board clerk and office staff. They are working on trying to figure out how to bring back open office hours if this becomes a longer term situation, whether it's through a phone call management or a time slot, or through using avenues like Microsoft Teams and Zoom, et cetera. So I just wanted to share that we haven't forgot about that, but we're still working through this transition, and we ask that you be patient with us and bear with us. Our phone lines at the school board office, please leave a voicemail. They are being checked regularly if you need to call in. If you have access to email, please email us at school.board@apsva.us. We have access to all the emails that come through that, but our school board office staff is monitoring them daily and are giving us weekly reports. If you need to reach us or if there's a concern, please email our school.board at apsva.us. They're also working with the superintendent's office to make sure that we're trying to be as responsive as we can to any concerns that we're hearing. So I just wanted to just remind you how you can still continue to reach us. And with that, I'm going to move us along to the next part of our meeting. And we are now at our consent agenda. And I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Actually, I'm told that when we have virtual, I have to do roll call.
Yes.
So we're going to start that practice now, so we're going to start that over, and I apologize, but when you're virtual, they ask for roll call. So I have a second by Reed Goldstein. So all in favor, I'm going to go by name, and I'll start with our colleagues on participating virtually. Ms. Van Doren,
Yes.
Dr. Cannonen,
Aye.
Mr. Goldstein? Aye. Ms. O'Grady?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. I'm not really sure how to self-roll call. I'll have to look at Robert's rules for that. So I'd like to now, thank you all for that. It's a practice we're going to have to start getting into. I'd like to announce that under consent, the board received the policy review brief and English learners brief. And I don't have copies of those tonight, but I ask that you look at them on our board docs, and I want to thank our staff for the work that they put into that. And our policy review brief does provide information on a new way that we're receiving a community engagement on our policies. So please, for those community members who are always supporting us with reviewing our policies and looking at that and providing us feedback, please look at that policy review brief. We also approved the school calendar for Barcroft Elementary for the 2021 school year. And finally, we approved the Perkins Grant application, which will provide funds that support career and technical education instruction in APS. We also have 2 monitoring items tonight, and we are taking full advantage of our board meeting this evening as, depending on what guidance we receive, any future virtual meetings may only allow us to present information that needs to be acted on, and any information that's related to the budget that has to happen so that we can act on the budget responsibly and in a timely fashion. And actually, there's a deadline in state code for us acting on budget. So I share that with you because we wanted to take advantage of this evening, sharing with you what was on our consent agenda, like the English learners brief and the policy review brief, which we may not be able to bring forward in future virtual meetings. And we are making a list of those things that are being pulled off our agendas so that as soon as we're able to put them back on, whether it's because we're meeting in person or we've gotten guidance electronically to have more flexibility in our meeting agenda, we will be able to put those back on accordingly and in a timely fashion. But with that being said, I'm excited that this evening we have 2 monitoring items. One is on the science and one is on social studies. And those are 2 of our core subjects that we have not been able to hear about yet this year. We've had our English learner work session, we've had our special education work session, we had a work session on English language arts, and we had a work session on our math, and our other 2 core subjects are science and social studies. And so I'm very excited that we are going to have the opportunity to hear from our staff on these 2 updates, and they're participating virtually. Is that correct, Ms. Johnson?
It is correct, and Ms. Talento took the introductory words from my mouth, which is wonderful. And with that, I'd like to turn it right over to Bridget Loft, and we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce Dot Lee, who is the supervisor of the Office of Science Instruction, and he will be sharing the science monitoring report. So I'll pass the baton to him.
Thank you, Bridget. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah. A little bit louder would be good.
Okay. Could everyone hear me now?
Yes, you are heard.
Okay, great. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ms. Talento and members of the school board, Ms. Johnson and members of the executive leadership team. I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you for allowing me to share our science monitoring report this evening. I also want to thank our science office staff members for their help with this report. And I believe Dwayne will flip the slides for us. So thank you, Dwayne. So next slide, please. So I would first like to share with you an outline of our science program, along with data to provide you with some insight. This includes our science SOL pass rate and science enrollment for advanced courses, including AP, IB, and dual enrollment. I will also talk about the work we are currently doing in our science office to help all students succeed. Finally, I will share with you what we've learned and opportunities for improvement, as well as some bright spots. Next slide. Our office includes 4 staff members. We also oversee the outdoor lab and the planetarium programs. Currently, there are 141 secondary science teachers, of which 57 are middle school and 84 are high school. Our science teachers in our science department are amazing. We owe them a lot of gratitude for the work that they do each day, providing students with quality instruction. And even in this environment, reaching out and working with our students directly to make sure that there's the continuity of instruction. Our science program offers 50 different science courses, including 6 different AP sciences, 7 IB, and 5 dual enrollment courses. This includes oceanography, environmental science, physics, anatomy, and geospatial tools. Next slide. As I've mentioned earlier, the science program also includes the outdoor lab and the planetarium. The outdoor lab continues to be a highlight for many APS students. More than 7,000 APS students participated in the outdoor lab program last year. This includes about 2,000 fifth graders who participated in the overnights. Our planetarium also has programs for K-12 that are also aligned with the standards of learning. All of our programs at the planetarium are very popular and have reached full capacity last year. Over 16,000 students visited the planetarium last year. Next slide. This year, there are many successes within the APS science program, including our science SOL pass rates. When compared to last year's pass rate, APS has made gains in 3 out of the 5 science SOL tests. And while there are variances between science subjects, there was overall growth in the science pass rate from 84% to 86% when combining all of the SOL tests. Here on this slide, you can see the pass rate percentage as well as the N value for each of the science subject areas. Next slide. Arlington outperforms the state in 4 out of the 5 science SOL tests. This includes grades 5, grade 8 physical science, biology, and chemistry. And while our earth science pass rate is lower than the state, most of our students do not take this course, and it's really a course that we have a small number. And what you'll see is that it has the smallest N value of the 5 science courses. Next. When comparing student demographics to the state, APS pass rate is higher for Black, Hispanic, and white students. I also wanted to point out that our Black students' pass rate is 8% higher than the state. And while our Asian students' pass rate is lower than the state, we're also seeing increase in pass rates for our Asian students as compared to last year. Next slide. With respect to our English learners and our economically disadvantaged and students with disability, our pass rate is also higher than the state. The largest difference is the students with disability group, where our pass rate is 10% higher than the state. Next, please. This next graph illustrates the 3-year trend for our science SOL pass rate. While there is still a gap, we are seeing improvements. As compared to last year, there were increases in scores across all of our demographic groups. Next. We're also seeing some progress on the science SOL test for our students with disability and economically disadvantaged students. And while the scores for English learners remain flat, we have a plan in place to support our L students so that they can succeed. This includes providing training and support for our science teachers and providing them with strategies to help English learners. We're also offering a new environmental science course that will provide our L students with foundational science knowledge and skills, as well as opportunities for language development. We will continue to collaborate with the L and SPED offices to support our students. This is a priority for all of us. Next slide, please. In addition to seeing progress with our high school science SOLs, our student enrollment in advanced science courses have also increased significantly. Since last year, we've seen our enrollment increase by 130 students, which is about 12%. This is largely because we have added more dual enrollment courses and therefore providing our students with more options for advanced courses. Next. It is important that we continue to offer our students more course options that will provide them with multiple pathways to success. For example, by providing more AP, IB, and dual enrollment courses, more students are taking advanced course science classes and are potentially starting college with more college credits in hand. This will be the second year we are offering the new environmental science course. This course will provide our students with foundational knowledge and skills, and also opportunities for science language development. The great thing about this course is that there's no SOL, no course prerequisite. It counts as a lab science, and students may choose to count it as a second year biology or a second year earth science course, which would be extremely helpful for fulfilling their graduation requirements. And while this course is open to all students, I spoke earlier about how it would be very beneficial for our L students. Our science office will be working closely with schools and counselors to use this course as part of the graduation pathway for many of our students. Next. A major emphasis of the APS science program is to connect scientific inquiry with project-based learning. The nice thing about project-based learning is that it allows our students to collaborate, problem solve, and engage in meaningful learning experiences. It also provides our students with a strong foundation for content knowledge and scientific processing skills. It also allows our teachers to differentiate instruction and to promote scientific discourse. Another major focus for this year for our science office has been developing a spiraling curriculum for middle school independent projects. The idea behind this is to focus on experimental design in the 6th grade, scientific research in the 7th grade, and tying it all together in the 8th grade with a capstone independent project. This will establish consistency and continuity across all middle school science programs. Not only that it will benefit our students, I think it speaks well to our efforts to move away from a system of schools to a school system. Next. As part of our last program evaluation recommendations, we continue to focus on lab safety in our classrooms. Our work this year includes updating the APS chemical hygiene plan and safety guide, collaborating with facilities and operations to conduct classroom and lab inspections, ensuring accurate chemical inventory, and proper disposal of chemicals and lab waste. We are also requiring all secondary science teachers to complete a 6-hour online chemical safety training and subsequent renewals every 3 years. Next. An area of strength for our science program is the partnerships that we have developed over the years and continue to develop. NOAA has provided us with a federal grant for our meaningful watershed educational experience for our students for the past 3 years. We continue to have a strong partnership with AOEA so that we can continue to have our students participate at the outdoor lab. AAAS has provided us with scientists in our elementary classrooms. This is a year-long commitment for our scientists, and all of our scientists would visit and support classrooms at least once a week. Some are there every day, so we're extremely appreciative of their support in our elementary schools. And EcoAction and Arlington Nature Centers are both from Arlington County and have been a great resource and a great community partner in which they provide resources and classroom visits as well. We also have many, many other partnerships, such as the Friends of the Planetarium, who are also extremely supportive of our science programs. So moving forward, we plan to strengthen and align science instruction across all grade levels. This will be accomplished by increasing content-based professional learning opportunities for our elementary teachers, and then also providing middle and high school science teachers with opportunities to collaborate on content articulation so that there will be continuity and alignment in instruction, especially between middle and high school, and then also aligning curriculum documents to our science instructional resources and also to the new science SOLs. We also plan to expand and enhance our performance assessments to help us measure students' understanding of key scientific skills. This will be accomplished by updating the 3rd grade performance assessments to align with the new science standards of learning. And because performance assessments are wonderful in assessing students beyond the SOLs, we would like to expand those to the upper elementary grade levels and also middle schools. And finally, to provide teachers with training in developing high quality performance assessments for classroom use. As our federal NOAA grant ends next year, we're also exploring ways to maximize meaningful watershed learning experiences for our students. To fulfill the VDOE watershed learning requirements, we're also looking to leverage resources at the Nature Center. This includes sending our students to the nature centers, but also having their staff visit our schools. We have staff visiting our 1st grade each year already, and we're hoping to expand that. We also want to take advantage of outdoor learning opportunities for our students. This can be something as simple as having our students go outdoors in their schoolyard. And finally, providing students with opportunities for sustainability action projects and civic engagement. We find this extremely important as part of our students' education. And we believe that this could be accomplished through science projects or leveraging our partners and community members, such as EcoAction and the Superintendent's Advisory Committee on Sustainability. Currently, our planetarium is temporarily closed, and because it is closed, we are taking the opportunity to enhance our programs. This includes developing more lessons that will extend the students' planetarium visits to their daily classroom instruction. Our planetarium director is also retiring in June, and so we'll need to start the hiring process next spring for this vacancy. And we also would like to continue our collaboration with the Friends of the Planetarium, including weekend shows and enhancing our offerings for different programs. So what have we learned? With the new science SOLs, we need to provide greater emphasis on science and engineering practices. We would like to align our curriculum, resources, and instructional practices to the new Virginia science SOLs that were released last year. There's evidence that we're making good progress in science. Our high school SOL pass rates are up, and we're seeing significant increase in our AP, IB, and dual enrollment students taking those courses. We would like to continue our focus on supporting students at the elementary level. Again, with the new SOLs, we would like to expand performance-based tasks to encourage more science instruction at the elementary level. And finally, we understand the great value of partnerships and leveraging community resources to support science instruction. We're also very excited about the hiring of a partnership coordinator, which is a huge work from the school board. And with that, I believe we can increase internship opportunities for our students and also leveraging community resources to support instruction, not just in science, but all content areas. Regarding opportunities for improvement, there are concerns with inconsistent science instruction at the elementary level. We're excited about the standards-based report card that we have in place and hope that we will revisit a way to standardize instructional time for science so that there is enough sufficient science instruction for our students in the K-5 grade level. With the new science SOLs, we would like to provide targeted professional learning for teachers to focus on scientific processing skills. This will be for elementary and secondary science teachers, as the new science SOL is moving away from memorizing facts and focusing more on scientific skills such as analyzing data. Teachers will need to have knowledge and skills for this new framework. And then there's also a great need for collaboration between science teachers and SPED and L teachers, greater collaboration. When it comes to team teaching, providing the space for sharing and planning will be critical for our students' success and for teachers to provide quality instruction. I'd like to end the presentation with some bright spots. We've had so many accomplishments in the APS science program this year. We continue to excel at VJS, Virginia Junior Academy of Science. This past year, over 200 students presented at ODU, Old Dominion University, and the majority of our students won prizes and were very successful. The number of awards and papers that were accepted by VJS were greater than any other school division. Last year, 11 out of our 17 students were nominated to state fair are from APS. One of our students from Washington Liberty won second place at the International Science and Engineering Fair, which is a big deal. And we continue to develop wonderful partnerships with our community. Our Scientists in the Classroom program continues to be a strong program, which currently has 24 scientists, and they're volunteering in 20 different elementary schools. And finally, our Federal Bay Watershed Education and Training Grant has trained and supported 92 science teachers. This exceeds what was in our proposal to train 60 teachers. And even beyond this grant period, our teachers will now have the knowledge and skills to implement meaningful watershed educational experiences for all of our students. And that is our report. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Lee. I'm going to ask my colleagues if there are any questions or comments. Mr. Goldstein, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Dot. That was a great presentation. I only have two. Oh, so I wanted to say I really enjoyed the part about the spiraling curriculum at the middle school level. I thought that was a very creative way of bringing up the whole curriculum standards. So I've only got two questions. So the first is the data you presented on slides 5 or 9 or 10. And the question is, are these statistically significant? Where you show the change from year to year to year for different, identifications or subgroups of students.
So the changes for on slide 5, it is not significant because if you look at it, we're talking about a point change over each year. But if you're looking at chemistry, where we're moving from 91 to 92 to 94%, there is a definite strong trend that we're moving towards. But when we're comparing with the state, the size now we're talking about is a lot larger in terms of our end size. So when we're comparing with the state, I think it was on slide 7. Now that would be statistically significant when we're talking about, for instance, where 6 and 7, excuse me, where we're talking at, for instance, grade 8, where the state is at 78% and where our data is at 85%. And what we've also included, if you could see from there, I think it's kind of small, is the end size. So when we're looking at the end size for the state, you can see how large that end size is, and in comparison with the data where our pass rate is 85 versus the state is at 78. So some of this, when we're looking at some of this data, it is statistically significant. On datas where we're looking at 1 point difference in the earlier slide, and because it has a small end value, those we could only look at trends and can't say that it's necessarily statistically significant.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. My second question is on slide 14. And that is about laboratory safety protocols. And are there concerns about class size impacting safety in the labs? I believe there's ratio guidelines from the the organizations that monitor chemistry or physics labs or something like that to assure student safety?
Yes, so safety is paramount for us in our science office. And we're constantly looking at class sizes and advocating in terms of when principals are establishing their master schedule. And one of the things that we have been sharing with principals, or an ask for principals, is that especially with our chemistry classes, when we're looking at accidents, not only in APS, but across the nation, and looking at the statistics with accidents, the majority of those accidents occur in the chemistry class. So one of our asks for school principals is that when they are doing the master schedule, that we try to minimize the number of students if possible. We know that it's not necessarily possible, but try to keep it around 24 so that we can support teachers in terms of running a class that where safety is paramount.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Ken, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you very much. Dr. Lee, fantastic. I always love to hear from you and about our great science program. Um, I'm going to try to reduce my questions to kind of one overall topic. And I think it was when our Equity and Excellence Department came to speak to us, it might have been about a year ago. I had asked them, I think instead of you, about whether we're doing enough to encourage our full array of students, students of color, low-income students, et cetera, to go into those advanced science fields, because that's, really science it's a great equalizer and a great opportunity for all of our students. But we've generally, I think, had an opportunity gap. And so I'd first just like to ask, I know you put the SOL results up in terms of looking at gap groups. We do have one of our priorities is talking about opportunity gaps and improving them. So I wonder if you have thought about, or if we can build into your thinking going forward, and this may be a question also for Ms. Loft, can we think about starting to do more work to encourage our full array of students to pursue those advanced science classes? Do we know right now, do we have a baseline on that? And is this something that you might be able to work on?
I think the idea of getting more students excited in science is critical. It absolutely is. And going beyond the SOL scores are just one measure. We need to get all of our students, especially our students who are not normally represented in the science field, to get excited about science through field experiences, through opportunities where they're participating in internships, and also taking intensified and advanced courses so that they have opportunities for research and opportunities for different opportunities so that they could consider going into college with a career in science. One of the things that we would like to do is to get students excited in science early on at the elementary level. And that's part of our initiative with the scientists in the classroom, and trying to get more scientists of diverse background, more scientists who are typically not the scientists that students see in TV, but scientists who are female and Black scientists, Hispanic scientists, so that our students could feel that they too can accomplish and they too can be a scientist, and that they can make that connection. One of the important piece with APS, initiative with APS, is to also have our students have somebody to look up to connect with. And one of our goals is to have those scientists connect with our students. And then also at the middle and high school level, looking at scientist mentors who can work with students and get them excited with science, and then also support their scientific research, support their work, and also encourage our students to take these advanced courses. So there are a lot of different pieces that are needed to work on this, so that we can get more of our underrepresented students to take science classes and ultimately going into that career.
So thank you. And I guess I would just say, I know you know how to do it, and we just need to make sure that we're supporting you and doing those things. I love the idea of you working on, building sufficient time in elementary, like you said, project-based learning. I think that spiral curriculum you talked about in middle school is a piece of it. So I guess I would just encourage you to, I know you have a very full plate, but get some baseline data, and then we can see if the various approaches you're talking about will actually help us build, because it's that's important. And then I just wanted to ask on the, did you say spiral curriculum? Am I using that term correctly? Just wanted to ask whether you have a timeline for that. Is that something you're building toward? And kind of where are you in that? And I think I heard you refer to a capstone project, which I think refers to kind of a science fair project. And as a piece of that, I know the Science Advisory Committee is talking about sort of expanding the different types of legitimate projects, not just dependent variable and independent variable, but are there other ways to do science fair projects? So what's the timeline and plan for getting that full spiral curriculum in place all the way up to the capstone project?
So we have planned that, and it was in the works. It has been in the works since last year. This is, as you know, for many years, we didn't have a specific requirement for middle schools. So some middle schools would have independent projects or have students do independent projects at certain grade levels, while others would have something different. So we convened all of our middle school science teachers and worked with them in terms of developing inputs and developing what this spiraling curriculum looks like. So our science teachers, our middle school science teachers, met several times and developed a framework in terms of what this would look like. That framework is now complete. For this upcoming year, it would be a training year for our teachers, a year where teachers would have professional development in terms of what this would look like in their classrooms. Something like this would require all of our teachers to be on board, and also the implementation would be consistent across grade levels. And in order for us to achieve that, we would need to provide training for our teachers and share with them what this would look like in terms of experimental design in 6th grade, what this would look like in terms of research in 7th grade, and then also what it would look like in 8th grade. And the goal is that after our teachers get the training and the professional development and I'm doing a pilot, the idea is for the school year 21-22 would be the first year implementation.
Thank you. Dr. Buchanan, are you done with your questions for the now?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Ms. Van Doren, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't. I just want to say thank you so much, Dot, as always. My kids greatly benefited from our program, and I'm cheerleading. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Lee. You did a great job sharing with us the experience of our students and our staff and where we are and where we need to go. I was especially happy to see the emphasis on environmental science in the future. I do think for our younger people, that is a science that is going to play a major role in their lives in the future. Additionally, the emphasis on project-based learning, I think, is another way for our students to be thinking, multidimensionally about science and perhaps other items in a way to create something that they feel challenges them on many levels. I wanted to ask you, I also wanted to note that while we're leading the state in many of our science SOL results, we do still unfortunately have a opportunity gap with our students, though I do think we're making some good progress when it comes to science. I think there's not as much in certain areas, for certain groups, not as much progress that we need to move forward. It looks like we're at a good starting point for working on eliminating some of those achievement gaps. But I wanted to ask you if the use of project-based learning and outdoor education on our system, do you feel that those are important tools for us continuing to make good gains to eliminate opportunity gaps? I did note that you're trying to work and ensure that our teachers have the ability to be able to continue to do that. So are those two tools that are helping us make some gains?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important that we continue to focus on that work in terms of project-based learning, continuing to train our teachers, providing professional development, providing them a space to share the work that they do in their classrooms so that they're not working in silos. There are a lot of wonderful lessons and projects that teachers do with their students, develop with their students, that's worthy of sharing and bouncing off ideas. And we're looking and continuing to provide that space through countywide meetings and through lead teacher meetings so that teachers continue to do that work. And again, I can't stress the importance of project-based learning enough, and I can't stress that we should continue towards that direction so that we're not starting something new and then looking back and starting something else. So it's really important for us to keep that work. In terms of outdoor education, that's another huge area where it's very important for all of our students. The outdoor lab provides our students with that experience, but it's not enough. One day activity would be nice in terms of giving them that opportunity to go outside, but it should be something that we continually offer our students and take advantage of our outdoor space, our schoolyard, and then also leveraging the nature centers, and then also incorporating that into our daily lessons. One of the nice things about outdoor learning is that it provides our students with relevance. So they're outside, they know, they see outside all the time, they go to the stream, even in their own backyard. For us to make that relevance, that's huge in terms of allowing them to make that connection and learning the concept.
Yes, thank you so much. I definitely agree with you that relevance is important for all students to be able to feel as if this is something that is approachable and understandable to them. We even see, I noticed that on St. Patrick's Day, even though we have families who are home, some students were going outside and looking at trying to find as many shamrocks as they could, and then using that as a science lesson and a math lesson. And so the idea of children engaging is important, and I do appreciate you sharing that an outdoor experience can happen even on our playgrounds and on our school grounds, and that we don't necessarily always need a bus to experience that. It can be implemented in our more often into our settings. And then one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is, as we see more schools embrace the idea of project-based learning. For example, Dr. Charles R. Drew works on project-based learning and is implementing that across its school, and also looking at STEM. Do you think that we will see that will reap the benefits of students having a much more engaged project-based learning experience at young ages, as young as pre-K or K? Will that be paying off in future SOL testing? So I guess my point is, are we investing now in something that we're going to see pay off later when it comes to reducing and we hope eliminating our opportunity gaps?
With project-based learning, I think it goes beyond the SOL. When students have the opportunity to engage in project-based learning in their classrooms, not only that they're learning the content area, but one of our hope is to have our students also learn the other skills that comes with project-based learning: the collaboration, the teamwork, the opportunity to develop their own solutions, analyze data, and be good scientists in the process, learning all of these skills as they are going through project-based learning. So it goes beyond the SOLs, and we hope that as they go at the elementary level and move forward to the middle and high school level, these skills are reinforced that ultimately will help our students succeed in science, but also beyond science in all levels. So I think it is a very well-worthy investment in terms of implementing project-based learning early and continuing on that track.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, and thank you, Chair Talento. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Dr. Lee, thank you for your presentation. I really appreciated it. I do have some questions on a couple of slides. I think first I want to start on slide 6, and I want to talk a little bit about the earth science numbers. I'm trying to be thoughtful about our time tonight because I know that it's always stressful right now to be out and about, and so I want to be thoughtful of everyone's time, especially as someone mentioned earlier that we have people at home. So I'm going to make some comments and then ask a question, but if in any of my comments there's an assumption that I made incorrectly, please clarify. So one of the things that I'm assuming from my recollection when my children were in high school is that earth science was a class that is the least taken for a variety of reasons. Many kids come into high school starting with biology or have other electives. And I'm curious to know the demographics of the earth science breakdown. I'm curious as to what that looks like because I wonder the fact that we're doing fairly well in all of the other subjects and even in other grades, but earth science is our least one. And my recollection is that most people have the opportunity to take other sciences, and earth sciences are for students that may not have those opportunities based on other challenges with their schoolwork. And so I really worry about why this number is low, and have you been able to break down the data? And if you haven't, then I would ask that you look at that data to determine, are these low-income students, are these students with disabilities, are these students with English learners, are they general education students, students that are not in an intensified or AP track, just so that we understand better the needs of how to meet that. Because I know that in my experience in working with you as a school board member, I know that your commitment to science and to our students is strong. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, and if you've looked at that data to understand who these kids are, understanding they're our smallest cohort, but are still students in APS.
Absolutely. So the earth science course, the reason why it is small is that a lot of our schools and school counselors often use that as a foundational course, whether the students need an SOL or not. In many cases, when they do need an SOL, they're often enrolled in that course. What we're looking at right now is using the new environmental science course as that foundational course so that students no longer need to enroll in that course. And if they are enrolling in that course or a biology course, our students will have that extra year in science where they're learning scientific concepts, they're getting an opportunity to develop language, science language development in that course, in that 9th grade environmental science course. And then when they're ready, they can either take biology or earth science. I think what we will ultimately see is that there will be fewer and fewer students taking that earth science course, and that N number will shrink drastically for two reasons. Number one is because with the new SOL requirements, students now only need to take one SOL. And VDOE has already designated that one course being the biology course. So students who take anything that's outside of a biology SOL are usually students who didn't pass the biology SOL test, and then they'll take either the chemistry or earth science. So our goal is now focusing on the environmental science course so that we could provide all of our students that foundational skill, and hopefully they won't have to use that environmental science course as a stepping stone course to acquire additional scientific knowledge and skills. So that would be our approach.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. We're looking at basically in the long term, are we looking at eliminating earth science and replacing it with environmental science, or will it still be an option? I'm unclear on that. Or we don't know yet.
It will still absolutely be, I'm sorry. It will be an option for our course.
Okay, so I just asked that, I'm sorry, Dr. Lee, there was an interruption. If you weren't done speaking, I'll stop. I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we're kind of breaking up with the with this, but I think that the earth science, we will continue to offer earth science, no doubt about that. But it will be for a course for students who are interested in that science course, and not a course where school counselors and schools are enrolling them in because there's not a foundational course in its place. So we will continue to offer earth science. It will continue to provide our students who need the extra science credit as part of their number of credits for graduation. So that will continue to be an offering. But the big difference is that we no longer will have to use it in a way that I don't think it's in its original purpose, what its use is for. Especially if we're having students who may need that extra science support, we can enroll them in the environmental science class.
I see. So a lot of students are being defaulted into this to meet a requirement, but not because they're choosing earth science, and so should I assume that we're thinking some of the lower scores is also lack of interest and lack of desire in being there, and we're hoping that environmental science provides the foundation that they need to then explore the sciences that they're interested in? That's what I'm hearing, is that correct?
Yes, and we're hoping that the environmental science, as Ms. O'Grady mentioned, is that one of the ways to get students excited about science again, rather than being in the science course because they have to, because it's a course that they may think they could pass the SOL. We want students to be in a course where they're interested in, at the same time that it will move them forward as a pathway towards graduation.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So one of the comments that I was going to make, and I just ask this again, that you look into this as you continue your work and commitment to our kids, is just to look at the breakdown of those students. I often worry about if it's students that are students with disabilities, English learners, low-income students, that sometimes there's subconscious bias that plays into some of these effects. Being able to work with our teachers to understand their cohort, why our students are not excelling in this. So I just ask that you look at that, and I was just going to make that comment for all of our the work that you're showing here this evening, like on slide 7 where you break it down by race. I would be curious to see how well our students are doing, our Hispanic students versus our Hispanic L students. I don't know if I'm assuming the Asian demographic group also has Asian students that are US born versus L Asian. So I'd be curious to see what that looks like, to understand maybe we are meeting needs of some students in these cohorts, and we're addressing subconscious bias, and maybe we're not in others. And so to be able to break that down would really show where we are truly succeeding and where our best practices are and where we really need to work. So I'll give that to you for feedback. And then, and if you have that data in follow-up, that'd be great, just so that we know where we are and where we need to push. And I worry about that, especially as we're entering this unknown time during this pandemic crisis, where I don't know what decisions will be made in budgetary that may have impacts on instructions. And I just want to make sure that we at least know really where our baseline is and the strength of our current baseline, so that we can ensure we're providing needs moving forward in our most at-risk and high-risk areas. And so just having that data is helpful. And then the only other question I wanted to ask about was on slide 10. And I wanted clarification on this, and I don't remember when it happened, if it was last year or in 2018, but I know that at some point, my understanding is that the VDOE asked us to take out a certain section of the English learner cohort in our data. And I'm curious, and so I'm asking if the drop from 2017 to 2018 is that the right slide? In the English learner data had to do with that? Was it a combination of the science SOL changing with that? If you could just explain the drop from like 62% to 40% from 2017 and 2018, to understand Did something change in our practices that affected it, or is it a combination of the new VDOE requirements and I believe the SOL, the science SOL changed recently as well. So if you could just provide some context behind that, I would appreciate it.
For the change between 2017 and 2018, the drop was consistent with the state and all of the other school divisions. When we examined the data, what we saw was that it was all school systems dropped at the same time. And when we looked at data between 2018 and 2019, we did not see other school divisions in the state as a whole recovered from that drop. If you look at the other groups, you'll see that there is a slight recovery between 2017, 2018, and 2019, where there's a drop and then there's a recovery. Something is with the in terms of the tests or other pieces, external pieces that we would need to explore. I don't believe that it is because of our practice that has been anything different. We are looking at more innovative ways to support our L students with collaboration with training our teachers. But again, we see that drop across a wholesale drop across all school divisions, and it has not bounced back in the state or other school divisions as well. But that is something that I think we need to explore, why that 2017 to 2018 drop across all school divisions.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I think that's helpful, and I'll be curious to see how that looks for us and the other counties in the state in the future. And thank you again for the presentation. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I was sad about missing the Regional Science Fair this past weekend. I know Reed and I were going to participate. And I think there was one, and Monique, 3 of us are going to go, and we were so excited about it. It's such a wonderful event. I'm assuming they're not going to reschedule it. Do we have any news on that? Do we know at least 2-1, or do we know anything?
So we are so sad too about the cancellation of the Regional Science Fair, but in this past 2 weeks, we have established a virtual science fair where all of our students who are enrolled in our normal regional science fair are now submitting documents, PowerPoints, even videos of them presenting. So we have been extremely busy in the last 2 weeks working with all of those students to submit their work, and then also getting all of the judges to agree to judge virtually. And they have been very, very supportive. We had a great number of judges who are willing to do that. And then also outside organizations that normally judge and provide their own prizes, scholarships and monetary prizes. Many of them are continuing to do that. And we've worked with them in this virtual regional science fair. So our students have submitted their work. The work now are in the hands of the judges, and we hope to have the results in a couple of weeks. But we are super proud of all of our students. We're saddened that they couldn't do the face-to-face one, but we're very proud of them, and we hope that this is a good option and that many of them will still continue the sense of proudness that they should with their hard work. And then I also want to say thank you for all of the school board members who have been so supportive of our regional science fair. It's definitely something that cannot be successful without your support, not only at the awards assembly, but also supporting the regional science program as a whole.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. We look forward to hearing the results, and we look forward to you all sharing them with the community as well. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for the presentation. And I think, Ms. Johnson, our second monitoring report is the annual social studies update. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Bridget. We're going to transition to our social studies, so I'll turn it over to you.
So I want to thank Dot for his thorough presentation, and I know we can expect a similarly fine presentation from Carrie Hirsch, our supervisor of social studies, who's online to share the social studies monitoring report.
Thank you, Bridget. Good evening, Ms. Talento and members of the school board, and Ms. Johnson and members of ELT. I'm very excited to be here tonight for my first monitoring report with all of you, even in this virtual circumstance. All right. And so, yep, next slide, just looking forward to, to the report. So similar to the science monitoring report, we'll share a little bit about the program profile, some of the good news that's been going on in the program, share some of that data around SOLs that provide some insight into the social studies program. I'll share a little bit with you about where we are in terms of our program evaluation recommendations, talk a little bit about what we've learned and opportunities for improvement, and then finish up with some of those bright spots. So our Office of 3 People supports social studies instruction for the students of APS, and we would not be able to accomplish this work without the support of our social studies lead teachers at the elementary and secondary level, as well as our 60 middle school teachers and 92 high school teachers. Our instruction is supported through 8 courses at the middle school level and 52 courses at the high school level to meet the range of abilities and needs of our students. Some of our program highlights include a range of supports. Our work this year has been focused on the big ideas of equity, inquiry, and performance-based assessments. Around curriculum and revisions and updates, we have revised and updated the social studies curriculum so that it is aligned to the current 2015 standards. We are in the process of revising the design and alignment of our middle school courses and assessments to more explicitly address the skills alignment created by the Virginia Department of Education, and I'll speak more about that a little bit later. Social studies is required to give local alternative assessments to replace the SOLs in 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade. This year, we implemented district-wide cross-scoring of these local assessments based on guidance from the VDOE. This is a highlight as Arlington is leading the way in implementing this VDOE requirement in a comprehensive way that involves staff from each of our elementary and middle schools. Professional learning is always a focus of our work. This year, we provided training to over 105 teachers and librarians on the document-based question process. DBQs are a type of performance assessment where students analyze primary and secondary sources in order to develop an argument or answer that is supported by evidence. In addition, we developed a menu for countywide professional learning that emphasized voice and choice as teachers chose from a variety of topics and formats that fall within our 3 areas of focus. So looking at some of the data that might provide some insight, this chart compares our APS pass rates from 2018 to 2019. The courses are presented here in the order that students would most likely take them. The first test, Virginia Studies, is taken in 4th grade. Civics and Economics and World Geography are both taken in middle school. And I will note that we are one of the only a few divisions in the state in which students take World Geography for high school credit at the middle school level. In 9th grade, our students take World History 2, and in 11th grade, students take USDA History. Only a small number of our students take World History 1, and this is generally in 10th grade, although it may vary. Our scores in both Virginia Studies, the 4th grade SOL, and Civics and Economics, the 7th grade SOL, declined. This was the first time that the technology enhanced items that had been tested for several years were actually included in the scores. These items focus on the ability of our students to apply their social studies skills. And so we're working through curriculum revision and professional learning with teachers to emphasize the development of these skills in all students. Due to the changing requirements from the VDOE on the number of verified credits that students need to graduate, the number of students taking our tests in World History 2, World History 1, and USVA History has decreased. Approximately 85% of our students now earn their one verified credit that is needed for social studies and history in their 8th grade World Geography course. After the 8th grade World Geography course, assessment then consists of a combination of local assessment and SOL exams, depending on the which verified credits the students have earned. Scores declined in our end of course exams except for World Geography and World History 1. Again, World Geography is that course that students take, that all students take. It is their first opportunity to earn that verified credit in social studies. One reason for this decline in the other courses is the reduced number of students taking the exam, and you can see that reflected in the N numbers that are at the bottom of the chart. For example, in 2018, 1,643 students took our World History 2 SOL, and in 2019, only 399 students took that SOL. The students who are taking these exams at this reduced number are now the students who have either not yet earned their verified credits in another course or might be new to the school system. And so often these are our students who need the most support. For World History 1, we've always had a limited number of students taking the test. And so as a result, the drop in numbers hasn't impacted this test as much. Of the students who take this test, most of them attend Washington Liberty as they offer this course at the highest level. So in 2019, of the 192 students who took that test, 122 of them were from WNL. We plan to look at the model that's used by the teachers at WNL, as it seems to work well for students taking that course as they are able to maintain and increase that pass rate. We're working with our lead teachers to develop plans and pathways for students to earn their verified credit, to include additional supports and restructured class pathways for some of our students. Next slide, please. This is the data on the 2019 pass rate for our Hispanic students. The chart shows the pass rates for all of our Hispanic students who are non-English learners, and our Hispanic students who are English learners. While the percentage that is charted is the percent of students who passed the test, the N provided at the bottom is the total number of students who took the test. There is a gap between our non-English learner Hispanic pass rate and that of our Hispanic students who are English learners. In Geography, World History 1, and USVA History, the Hispanic non-English learner pass rate meets or exceeds that of all students taking the test in APS. Next slide, please. This chart compares our APS pass rate for each exam with the pass rate for our Hispanic students, including the English learners, and the state pass rate for our Hispanic students, also including English learners. I wanted to speak to some of the variance in the civics and economics course. And we're currently in the process of changing the way that we teach civics and economics. Currently, civics and economics content is split between our 6th grade and 7th grade US history courses, with students taking that exam at the end of 7th grade. We are in the process of moving all US history content to 6th grade, which will allow us to have a standalone civics and economics course in 7th grade. We believe the new course structure, as well as the purposeful design that focuses on teaching students the social studies skills that they need, will lead to improved outcomes for all of our learners. While our pass rates are lower than the state in both World History 2 and USVA History, much of that comes from the fact that our number of students taking those tests are reduced compared to the rest of the state, because of the fact that most of our students have earned their verified credit already by passing the World Geography SOL in 8th grade. Next, please. This chart compares our pass rate for all of our Black students to those of our Black students who are English learners and those who are not English learners. You'll notice that there are some areas on the chart where there is no data, and for World History 2, World History 1, and USVA History, the pass rates were less than 50. And so I provided that N size at the bottom so that you could see the number of students, but the data wouldn't pull over because of the number of students that were there. Next slide, please. This chart compares the APS pass rate for each exam with the pass rate for our Black students, including Ls, and the state pass rate for Black students, including our Ls. Again, our pass rates are lower than the state in both World History 2 and that USVA history. And the number of students taking those tests in APS is reduced compared to the rest of the state. We recognize the opportunity gap that is present when comparing the scores of all APS students to those of the Black students in APS. Next slide, please. This chart compares the APS pass rate for each exam with the pass rate for our students with disabilities and the state pass rate for students with disabilities. While we outperform the state on all but the World History 2 exam, we have a significant opportunity gap when compared to the pass rate for all students in APS. We do believe that some of the shifts that we are making, including reorganizing our course sequences and structure, as well as a focus on skills, will help all of our students achieve at higher levels. Next slide, please. This chart is our APS pass rate for each exam with the pass rate for our economically disadvantaged students and the state pass rate for economically disadvantaged. In all of our data, despite the small number of students, we consistently have higher pass rates than the state in World History 1. While most of our students don't take this exam, the ones who do are students who have not yet passed a previous SOL. And so again, we believe it's worthwhile to examine the successes in this course so that we can try to replicate them in other courses for all of our students. In addition, we're focusing on strategies that support our English learners and students with disabilities. We strongly believe that while those strategies are required to be used with our English learners and students with disabilities, they will benefit all of our students, including those who are economically disadvantaged. Next slide, please. These charts show the 2-year trends for history and social science SOLs taken as a whole. We have a downward trend in the pass rates, including for our Black and Hispanic students. Again, one reason for that trend is that we are testing fewer students than in prior years. In the past, students took these tests, all students took the test, regardless of if they had already passed an SOL in the past. And now we're only testing those students who need a verified credit. So this means that our students who need the most support are the ones who are taking these multiple SOL exams. The good news in this data is that we do have an upward trend towards closing our opportunity gaps for our English learners, our students who are economically disadvantaged, and our students with disabilities. Next slide, please. Our enrollment in AP, IB, and dual enrollment courses has remained relatively stable. The good news in our AP data is that the percentage of Black students earning a 3 or better has increased in US history, world history, European history, government, and economics in all of those AP exams. And the percent of Hispanic students earning a 3 or better has also increased in AP US history, AP world history, AP European history, and AP economics. Next slide, please. So in order to support our students and provide more effective instruction in civics and economics, as I mentioned, we're realigning our middle school curriculum. Unlike other school systems, we offer that world geography in 8th grade. And so this allows our students to earn their verified credit in social studies. This table explains how the changes will occur in middle school courses over the course of the next 2 years. And so this year, our students take US History, Civics, and Economics 1 in 6th grade. In 7th grade, they take US History, Civics, and Economics 2. And then in 8th grade, they take the World Geography course. Next year, our 6th graders will move to taking a survey course that is US History to the present. We'll maintain the same 7th grade course for next year so that the students who started with US History, Civics, and Economics 1 this year will be able to finish out that coursework next year. And then in the year 2021-22, we'll have that survey course for 6th grade, and then the standalone civics and economics course in 7th grade. And so we hope that this will allow us to focus more intently on skills as well as content that will help all of our students be more successful. Next slide, please. One strategy I've referenced as a way to help support students is a focus on the VDOE social studies and history skills. And this is standard 1 for each of the courses, for every social studies course that, that exists for Virginia. The VDOE has outlined 10 skills that are taught in social studies, and the grades at which students at various, the grades at which students should be at various levels of understanding. The table here, which I know is too small to read, it outlines the skills at the middle school level, and we have this for elementary all the way through high school. And we believe that these skills are crucial, as most content these days can be quickly Googled or found in reference materials. Unless our students understand what to do with all of the information at their fingertips, they will be unsuccessful. Next slide, please. We know that building the literacy skills of students is crucial in helping them be successful in our courses. And so we've emphasized the document-based question process over the past 2 years in order to engage students at all levels. These strategies allow elementary teachers to integrate social studies content into reading and writing. They allow students at middle and high school to practice their skills of analysis and writing so that they can make arguments that are supported by evidence. These materials also help us raise the level of rigor in all of our courses. We believe that this emphasis will help us raise student test scores. Next slide, please. We are working to ensure an engaged workforce by making sure our teachers have the tools they need to be successful with our students. This year, we've focused on equity in a variety of ways to make sure that students feel comfortable in their classes and see themselves in the curriculum. So that has been one area of our professional learning focus. We've also focused on inquiry and performance-based assessments so that students are able to demonstrate what they're able to do with content rather than just memorization of facts. We've also been working with the Office of English Learners to ensure that our staff has SIOP training, which we know the strategies support not only our English learners, but all students. Next slide, please. As Dr. Lee said, we also value the partnerships that we have within the community. And this year, I'd like to just feature 3 of them while we have many others. This year, our work with the League of Women Voters helped to register 402 students before the March 3rd primaries. Another important partnership that we've had this year is with the census, and we've been working closely with Arlington County and the Census Complete Count Committee to ensure that teachers are well informed about census and are able to bring strategies, including statistics in schools, into their classrooms. This will help students understand why the census is important and hopefully support them and their families in completing the census materials. The third partnership is the Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation. And in January of 2020, we had 25 school visits in 1st and 2nd grade that served over 2,700 students. Next slide. The next 4 slides provide updates on our program evaluation recommendations from our last program evaluation. We're currently in the data collecting stage for our next program evaluation, and so we've made great strides in addressing many of these recommendations. Our first recommendation was to provide professional development to support the implementation of effective differentiation strategies across grade levels. And so a few of the things that we've done include SIOP training for the social studies teachers. We've collaborated with a variety of offices, including Gifted Services, the ELA office, and ATSS to support differentiation for all students. through both professional learning and the document-based question process. And then the focus on teaching the standard 1 social studies skills allows teachers to easily differentiate. And this is in addition to the work that we continue to do around History Alive and many other strategies. Next slide. The second recommendation from 2015 was to support teachers in increasing the level of rigor in all social studies courses. And so some of the strategies we've implemented, again, is the document-based question process. We've begun working with teachers in social studies on the inquiry design model, which supports the C3 framework from the National Council for Social Studies. We've worked on problem-based learning, specific content professional-based learning offerings, collaborating again with a variety of offices within DTL, and developing high-quality curriculum resources that involves interdisciplinary work at all levels. Next slide, please. The third recommendation was that we provide opportunities for greater and more effective communication between the Social Studies Office and special education and English learner teachers. And so over the past few years, and we continue to do this, all of our special education and English learner teachers are included in all Social Studies Office distribution lists so that they are involved in all of our communication. Special education and English learner teachers who support social studies engage in professional learning with the Social Studies Office. And as we've worked with curriculum writing teams over the past couple of years, we've ensured that we have both special education and English learner teachers on those curriculum writing teams to speak to the needs and supports of those students. Next slide, please. The final 2015 recommendation was to collaborate with elementary principals on the implementation of effective social studies instruction at different grade levels, encouraging literacy integration across the grade levels, and departmentalized social studies instruction in the upper grades. And so some of the strategies we've been utilizing are visiting elementary classrooms as part of our annual walkthrough schedule. We've been attending CLT meetings at elementary schools to support literacy and content integration. We've been using or having close collaboration with the ELA office to align the elementary social studies curriculum with the ELA curriculum so that it's easier for teachers to teach both of those content areas. And then ensuring that we are training large numbers of our elementary teachers in the DBQ process to pair literacy skills with those social studies skills. Next slide, please. And so what we learned as we went through all of this, as I've taken this job and been in the office for the past few years, we've learned that we need to continue to support our Black and Hispanic students by ensuring that they see themselves in the curriculum and by providing relevant experiences. We've learned that we need to continue elementary content integration with literacy to give teachers the time and support they need to teach all of the variety of content that they need to teach. We've learned that professional learning in response to our last program evaluation showed us some good results. And so we have more students now achieving 3 and higher on AP exams. And so we want to continue that purposeful professional learning along with curriculum development in all of our areas, but especially in 4th grade and in the middle school to use skills rather than memorization of content to improve our outcomes. Next slide, please. So opportunities for improvement. We see opportunities for continued partnerships with the other offices within the Department of Teaching and Learning to help us close those opportunity gaps. We want to work with our schools to ensure that students have access to course pathways that will help them be successful. And we want to continue our partnerships with the Office of English Learners and Office of Equity and Excellence to make sure that we're working together to support those students. We do see the realignment of the middle school courses as an opportunity that will help us improve as we move forward in the future. We want to support our elementary teachers in developing ways to integrate that content between social studies and ELA to help ensure some consistency of instructional time for social studies at the elementary level. And then one real area that we're working on right now is increasing our monitoring of our performance-based assessments with a skills-based rubric that's based on that, the pink chart that I showed you with the standard 1 skills. Using a common rubric based on those skills will allow us to provide a growth measure of student progress. And so we'll be able to use that rubric to track progress for students both within 1 year and then also from year to year to see how they're progressing in those skills. And we think that'll be important as it's another measure outside of the SOL that will help us assess how successful our strategies are for our students. Next slide. And do want to close with a few bright spots. We are leading divisions in the state in facilitating these local assessments, the cross scoring events in our 3 required grade levels. And that's our jumping off point for continuing that work with a common rubric across all grade levels. Another bright spot that we mentioned was that League of Women Voters registering 402 students to get out and vote before the primaries this year. We provided voice and choice to our teachers in professional learning. We've trained over 105 teachers and librarians in the DBQ process. And I did want to mention, again, school board recognized Mary Beth Donnelly, a teacher at Swanson, who was named the 2019 Virginia History Teacher of the Year. And so that concludes the presentation that I have for you tonight. And I look forward to answering what questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch, for your presentation. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions or comments. Why don't I start with Ms. Van Dorn, who's with us virtually. Ms. Van Dorn, do you have any questions or comments for Ms. Hirsch?
Hi, I don't. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Dr. Kennan, do you have any questions or comments for Ms. Hirsch?
Hi, yes, thank you. Well, first, I want to say I've really enjoyed working with Ms. Hirsch this year. Yeah, everyone counts on the Census Complete Count Committee. It's unfortunate that we're in this situation as the census is really kicking into gear, but it's been a really phenomenal effort and a lot of community involvement. In APS, we were constantly hearing how collaborative APS was and how much we were doing for the community. So thank you for that. I just had one question. Thank you. Very thorough report. I really enjoyed it. And I just had one question. I don't remember the slide, but early in your presentation, you mentioned the number of courses in middle school and high school. Yeah, and it sounded like the high school number was really quite large. And I wondered, yes, could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. When I actually went to count it, I was quite surprised. There are some overlaps with some of the immersion versions of courses at Wakefield or things like that, but we have a large number of variety of AP courses, and so the numbers fluctuate between what students take every year. And also a lot of the IB courses fall under social studies, even if they're not exactly what you might traditionally think would be a social studies course. And then we've added some electives recently, like the African American studies, and then it doesn't fall in this year, but the Latin American studies that will start for next year.
Thank you. So it sounds like, what was the number of classes?
I think it was 52.
I think that's what I heard. Yeah. And I see what you're saying. There's some overlap with, immersion and some things that are really the same courses, just for a program. But at the same time, especially maybe those AP courses, I do wonder, we're struggling with budget. We've been struggling. And I do wonder if maybe we should take a little bit of a look at that. With that many different courses, those classes are running small and on average, and that means other classes are much larger. We hear about, 28, 29, 30 students in the math classes, for example. Principals have to balance everything. So I think I would just like to ask if that might be something as we struggle with the budget, especially, that maybe we want to take a look at.
Yeah, I would be willing to look at that. And one thing that a lot of school systems have been looking at, there's been a change with the AP World curriculum, and they've shrunk the time frame that they study in AP World. And so a lot of school divisions are looking at whether they offer both world history and European history, or if they drop one of those courses, because now they're covering a lot of similar time frame and content. So that's one that stands out as something that we might take a look at, but I'd be willing to take a look at the others as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goldstein?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Carrie. I'm still hung up on this World History 2.
Yeah.
And the, I guess, first of all, I'm confused. Why does World History 2 come before World History 1 in the sequencing of courses?
So when the decision was made to move to offer world geography in 8th grade, when they looked at the course sequencing, students would, because they only needed 2 courses in world history or geography, if we offered World History 1 in 9th grade, students would never have had to take a course in modern world history. And so the thinking, as far as it was explained to me at the time, was that because students do get some exposure to ancient world at the elementary level, they wanted there to be the opportunity for students to experience modern world history at that point. And then many students used to go on to take the AP World course, which did include some of the ancient world history as well.
Okay. But I'm looking at slide 5 and also 9 about the differences in the pass rates.
Yep.
For World History 2. And, I mean, I understand why the N has dropped. I'm looking at slide 5 now. Why the N has dropped from 2018 to 2019. But I don't understand why the pass rate has dropped.
So one of the reasons that pass rate we think has dropped is the students who now are taking that, the students who make up those 158 students are students who had not yet passed world geography, and there are students who traditionally have struggled. And so I know when you were talking with Dr. Lee about some of the data about who these students are, they do tend to be our students who might be our English learners. They may be, some are students who are new to the school system, but a lot are our students who have struggled historically to pass standardized tests. And so that's, I think, why we're seeing that reduced pass rate.
I see. And then when you get into grade 10 and the World History 1, I mean, again, these are students who, or I should ask that question, are these students who did not take world geography? Or are they students, because the N is pretty low, or are they students who took world geography but are also taking World History 1 as an elective?
No, so these are going to be students who they may have taken world geography, but they didn't earn their verified credit in it. And so most of the students who take that are either earning their verified credit there, or they may be students who are taking it as an elective who've opted not to take an advanced placement course or some other course of that fashion.
But those pass rates are very similar to, both years that are being shown. Again, I'm on slide 5.
Yes, so I think the reason for that is because it's always been a small number of students. The largest number of students who take that are at WNL, and they have used this course because they do believe it's a course where we can really support students to be able to earn that verified credit. And so one of the things I'd like to do moving forward is to examine how they structure that course and what supports are in place, because they've continued to have a relatively high pass rate, despite the fact that it's usually a population that has yet not earned a verified credit. And so they do sometimes need additional support. And so I'd like to look at how we can use that model and transition it into our World History 2 classrooms to perhaps bring up our scores for some students. The challenge we run into with the World History 2 is that every student takes that course. The only students who are taking the test are the ones who struggle to pass their verified credit prior to that. And so while the World History 1 course can be really focused on supporting our students, the teachers have to do a lot more differentiation in the World History 2 because we have every student in those courses. And what we don't want to end up with are specific tracks of students who need to pass the SOL and those who don't.
And so do you have an understanding of why it's so different at the state level? I'm looking at slide 7 now, which are the data for the Hispanic students. But the same thing exists on slide 9.
Yeah.
The data for the black students, that the pass rates for the state, are way above what we're seeing here in Arlington.
Yeah, so again, that's because across the state, that's usually where kids are earning their verified credit. And so we're one of only 3 school divisions where students earn their verified credit in middle school. And so you still have that diverse population across the state taking the test at this point. And so their pass rates are higher because they have virtually all their students taking that test. Whereas for us, it's again our students who need more supports.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that helps me understand that a lot better. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you, Chair Talento. I have 3 questions, I believe. Ms. Hirsch, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very informative. One of the things I was wondering as we take a look at some of the SOL pass rates, we do again see some discrepancies with some of our students and still see a prevalence of an opportunity gap. And so some of the items that you put forth moving forward, I thought were very hopeful. Some of the things you mentioned as well in ensuring that we're adding more opportunities for students to see themselves in some of these classes, like the Hispanic Studies class, I think that's coming up, as well as
Latin American Studies.
I'm sorry, Latin American Studies. I appreciate that. I'm sorry I didn't have that to refer to. I appreciate that. And then also, I think African American history was one of the other ones. I think those are helpful. I wanted to find out if those are examples, or if you could share some other examples of when you talk about voice and choice for students that you feel will help all of our students potentially do better and be more successful. And if you feel like extending voice and choice will actually help us make some progress in eliminating opportunity gaps.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things for social studies that are very promising. I think in offering voice and choice, I mean, in one way, we're really focusing on asking teachers to support students to learn these social science skills rather than memorizing content. And one thing that allows us in social studies to have that focus is the fact that now we do only have the requirement for 1 verified credit and the ability to then demonstrate learning for students through performance-based assessments. And so in building curriculum and as we revise this to be more culturally competent, we can provide more ways for students to dive more deeply into around the same era of history or the same content. They can look at pieces that speak to them. And I think that over time, it will help students really engage more in the history content because they'll be able to have more personal connections to it. And I think that will end up showing us that they're able to apply those social science skills, which ultimately will help us not only on the SOL, but on those performance-based assessments as well.
Thank you very much. That was helpful. When we look at, my second question is, when we look at civics and economics as a standalone course, I found that quite interesting because I can remember one of my 7th graders kind of working on preparing to pass an SOL and civics and economics and going over some, other history content. I hear you say that we believe that our students will be more successful when we separate those classes out, but I didn't understand exactly why, because we're going to be putting more content back into 6th grade and making perhaps that class be more rigorous and have to, for students to have to get a lot more content, but then having to understand, well, does that mean you're going to go more deeply into civics and economics? So can you share the rationale behind that a little bit more?
Yes, thank you. So obviously putting 2 history courses together into one is a lot more content. And so the way that we're addressing that is by really focusing on those standard 1 skills. And the reason we can do that is because the SOL at 6th grade has been replaced by local performance assessments. And so we're able to kind of incorporate both the voice and choice and that focus on skills. So instead of students needing to memorize every American Indian tribe, they'll use some of the skills that we have in place to break that content apart. And let's say in small groups, research one of those tribes, and then perhaps come together and use some of those social science skills to have an analytical discussion about what they learned about their one piece, and then be able to find some commonalities there. So we've really worked to break down that 6th grade course, and we have been really purposeful to have English learner, an English learner teacher, a special education teacher, as well as a resource teacher for the gifted, and a equity and excellence coordinator to make sure that we are providing all the supports in that rigorous course. And then in 7th grade, as you said, we can now move all of the civics and economics content that used to be split across 6th and 7th grade into that one course where we'll be able to dive more deeply into those concepts. And yet we still don't want that to be memorization of content. And so we believe having it in 1 year will really allow us to develop some really interesting problem-based learning units with civic action, where students can actually put into practice some of the things that they're learning about and retain that information better.
Well, I think that's really exciting for our students, this thinking back to what we heard in science as well. It's getting your hands kind of involved in what can I do, how do things relate to me, and having students be able to speak up on things that they feel are impacting them. And so getting them more involved and understanding how what they're learning can actually impact their world is really helpful. The last question I have is, I see a lot of plans to improve what you're doing to serve students, including more professional development and opportunities for cross-collaboration between different teams in our system. And this might be for Ms. Johnson, but as we take a look at what we're dealing with now, which is a lot of distance learning, I'm unsure whether or not we're going to have the opportunity for our teachers and staff to collaborate more and get that professional learning that can make a big difference for next year. Yeah. Wanted to know what the plans are in that, and I'm not sure who the best person to answer that is.
Well, I'm actually going to have the staff answer, but I just want to take advantage of this opportunity to say that the state is encouraging us to be very innovative and seek out new opportunities and ways to pursue learning opportunities for teachers as well as students. So I think that the Department of Teaching and Learning is probably exploring some of that. So would you like to respond, Carrie, a little bit?
Sure. I think in the big picture, part of what DTL is working on with the plan will kind of formalize some of our structures. But I would say that even just over the past, I don't even know how many days it's been that we've been home. Just this morning, our world geography team, they've created a team in Microsoft Teams. They had added everybody who teaches that course across the school system, including the special ed and English learner teachers. And then just this morning, we had a virtual call using Microsoft Teams where they were sharing with each other how they've used a Canvas course that we have for them to share resources and to support students. And so I assume that teachers will continue to do some of that on their own, and that hopefully we'll be able to leverage some of those tools to continue to support professional learning for them.
I would like to also offer the opportunity to Bridget Loft to maybe, if you'd like to offer a little bit more in terms of the work for the overall department.
I apologize, Cynthia, if I repeat some of the things you're saying. I'm having a little bit of internet issues, so I didn't quite hear what you had said before Carrie jumped in, but thank you, Carrie. I would say that plans are ongoing to continue to support the cross-discipline collaboration that needs to happen, and I think one of the silver lining forums for us to have this cross collaboration that might have actually been more challenging. Were we working together in person, we can have conflicting meetings, or heaven forbid, are in schools helping other students. So in some ways, we've been able to maximize this opportunity that we're all sort of singularly focused on providing support for schools and being able to collaborate in a way that maybe we wouldn't be able to do in person. So I'd say other ways that we're working to support our teachers is that we've really provided mechanisms for them to work in their collaborative learning teams and to even be able to communicate across schools via Microsoft Teams as well. So I think we've got some really rich synergy happening now, and we've got plans in place to continue that once we return to normal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I understand Ms. Van Doren actually has questions now. Ms. Van Doren, are you there?
Yes, I am, and I don't have a question. I just wanted to share that regarding Washington Lee, having had 4 kids go through there and having a child who was in that segment of the world history class, and being connected to other families of students with disabilities. I think what Washington Lee does exceedingly well is offer that world history class to any and all students who want to be in it. And they level the playing field in the class by having it be co-taught. And the students do not know one teacher from the other. And it's very, very well done. And they just assume the students will take it, and they assume that they will have to add on as many segments of that as they need to add on. So I do highly recommend that you look at that as a model, and we should be looking at that across the system. But I know that that works for kids there, and it's one of the reasons why WNL has such a good reputation for students with disabilities. I just wanted to add that.
Yes, thank you. It's impressive whenever we're over there and visiting those classrooms to see the collaboration between those teachers. So thank you for highlighting that.
It's getting great results.
Yeah.
Thanks. Tanya, thank you for letting me add that.
No, thank you, Ms. Van Doren. We're having fun here learning how to use this new tool, so I appreciated that communication through Microsoft Teams. Ms. Hirsch, I want to say thank you for your presentation. I really appreciated the breakdown of data. I think it's very helpful for us as board members to be able to see that and to understand that staff is looking at it, so that when we do ask our questions about our gaps, we know that you're seeing the different factors that come into play And I appreciated your comments as you went through your presentation on how you're trying to address those gaps. So I wanted to say thank you for that. So because of that, I don't have really a lot of questions. I am curious, was there also a change in the history and social studies SOLs from one year to next? Was there a change in how they're testing? Or I know, because I'm noticing the drop, but I also noticed that it's statewide.
Yeah, so one of the factors was there have always been technology enhanced items, which really get at students being able to apply those skills. And they weren't included in the scores before, and now they are. And so that's one of the factors that I think has led to that, and one reason we want to emphasize those skills.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by technology enhancement skills?
Sure. So they're instead of just standard multiple choice, they usually have some kind of either like a manipulative or like a map maybe that has ask students to be able to instead of just saying memorizing a fact, they actually have to be able to apply information as they interpret these kind of more visually enhanced items that are on the test.
Okay, that's helpful. That's interesting. Thank you.
Yep.
I have some questions about, just for feedback, I don't have a question, but I'm curious as to how actually, how that might actually be more difficult for an English learner, or, you know, just understanding a whole nother level of interpreting the English language to understand the actual directions of what they're asking. So I'd be curious to learn about that. But so I think that was all the only questions I had this evening. My colleagues addressed a lot of the things that I was thinking about. And I just wanted to say thank you again for the presentation, for all of the information that you provided this evening. And I do think, I was excited to hear the Science and Social Studies report tonight. I do think that there are subjects sometimes that we don't focus enough on, and I think that social studies and science have skills that really are lifelong skills applied to them. History in particular, if you study history, you understand exactly what can happen. And actually, we're studying history now and comparing this current pandemic to the 1919 flu pandemic, and studying the curves and what's happened. So it's just fascinating to be able to hear this information tonight. Please know that you have support on this work. You and Dr. Lee on the science and social studies work. I know that these are core subjects that aren't often dug deeper into, but thank you so much for the dedication and the presentation.
Thank you all for your support, and thanks.
Okay, and any final questions or comments? Dr. Cannon and Ms. Van Doren? Okay, great, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Okay.
Thank you, Carrie. Greatly appreciated.
So we will
Thank
now.
you.
We will now take up 2 items for information and action. Just a reminder, we are trying to make the most of tonight's in-person meeting and do what we can tonight, since we will not be meeting April 2nd, and we're working through the logistics of having a virtual meeting on April 16th in accordance with the virtual meeting guidelines and constraints that we are under. So tonight we are going to have 2 items for information and action. After each item is presented for information, we will have a Q&A session, and if there are no concerns that prevent the board from taking action, the board will take action on them. So the first the first item is the Special Education Annual Plan. Ms. Johnson, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, I'd again like to do the introductions through their supervisor, Bridget Loft.
Hi, this is Bridget. I hope that you can see me. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with Teams this evening. I'd like to introduce Kelly Krug, the Interim Director of Elementary Special Education, and Heather Rothenbuscher, the Interim Director of Secondary Special Education, who will be sharing our Special Education Annual Plan with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bridget. Good evening. Ms. Toleno, school board members, and ELT. Heather and I are happy to be here tonight to inform you on our annual plan. Every year, the annual application for special education programs is a requirement from the Virginia Department of Ed. It's basically our vehicle for communication between our school district and the state educational agency. Tonight, you will hear a description of how our federal entitlement funds are spent. That includes Section 611, which encompasses all of our students 3 through 21, as well as Section 619, which is for preschool. It also has various other areas that we report on: our policy statement, our statement of assurances, how we implemented the previous year, and other areas such as our correctional facilities. Next slide, please. Okay, so for this upcoming fiscal year, we are still to be determined on what our overall operating budget will be for the Office of Special Ed. But coming up for fiscal year 21, the proposed amount that is based off of our December 1 count that we report to the state will be about $5.2 million. And of that, we will have preschool funds of $106,696. Coming up in this operating budget, APS will be funding the following areas. That includes things like assistive technology, hearing services and audiological, our child fine, extended school year, vision, various related services such as speech and occupational therapy, physical therapy, students that are transitioning, post-secondary, specific disability support, instructional support, compliance support, and of course, parental and family support. Next slide, please.
Okay, and in this section, we look at the breakdown for our proposed budget with the IDA Part B grant. In Section 611, we're going to use basically almost all of the money for personnel and their benefits, and 1% will go to purchase services. In 619, we'll break down by percent. We'll do 62% of personnel and benefits, 26% of materials and supplies, 7% instructional and assessment materials, and 5% will go to professional development. Next slide, please. So in our proposed budget, the positions that we would include would be assistants. These are instructional, resource, transition, and hourly assistants. We're going to have our child find teachers in there, some clerical support coordinators, some of the student support coordinators, transition coordinators, and parent resource center coordinators. We also include the funds that we set aside for our private schools where we have students who are parentally placed. We have a psychologist, technical support specialist, and then included in that, we also have some instructional materials, and the remainder of the funds go for the benefits to support those positions that are listed above. Next slide, please. And this is the timeline for the annual application. We start in December, we get our December 1 count, and we look to our budget development until March. In March, actually last Friday, we provided feedback on the annual plan to our ASAC committee and gave them the opportunity to give us feedback. Tonight, we are providing information to the school board. The date has changed for the April 16th. If I think it may be moved up to this evening, the submission, and then in May, we submit to VDOE. And once the VDOE approves our application, then it will be posted on the website. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rauschenbuscher and Ms. Krug. Let me find out if we have questions from our colleagues who are attending electronically. Let's start with Ms. Van Dorn. Ms. Van Dorn, do you have any questions?
Hi, both of you. Thank you very much for the great presentation. I just wanted to say thank you, and it looks great. It's similar to what we've done always in the past. And I just wanted to remind the people who are watching and listening to this that this is a small fraction of the money that is spent in Arlington Public Schools to support students with disabilities and early intervention services, and that the vast majority of the funds for these services comes from our local tax dollars. So I'm very grateful for the federal funding, but it's never kept up with the need, nor is it supposed to keep up with all of the need. It is supposed to assist us and support us. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that this is not the complete amount of funding in this area, but we're grateful for it, and this is typical in how we use this money when our allotment from the federal government. So thank you. I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you for that work.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. Dr. Kedden, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions, thanks.
Mr. Goldstein?
No, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't have any questions at this time. Thanks.
Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I did want to know what the response you got from ASAC was in response to the application.
They did not really have any feedback. It's extremely similar to last year, almost identical. So they were all in support of it and are happy that we are moving it forward.
Thank you very much. Then no additional questions.
So thank you, Dr. Krug and Mr. Rothenberger, for the presentation and for being available for us this evening. As we shared before, we are going to act on this tonight so that we can submit this and get this in a timely fashion. I do not have questions. I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing with our special education department this year and during these unprecedented circumstances. So thank you. And again, thank you for being available this evening.
Thank you.
So, great. So I'm going to call for a motion. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the board approve the 2020 annual application for Arlington Special Education.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Elliott, I know that we briefly spoke during the meeting about a roll call. Is that something that I could do, or is that something that the clerk does?
I will be happy to do that for you. So
Excellent.
those in favor of the motion, please say aye, and any opposed, say nay when your name is called. Mr. Goldstein?
Aye.
Dr. Cannon?
Aye.
Ms. O'Grady?
Aye.
Ms. Talento?
Aye.
Ms. Van Doren?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And so this is how we'll have to do our motions when we do virtual meetings. So to make sure that everyone can hear everyone vote.
May I thank both Heather and
Please.
Kelly, please, before they leave us? Thank you both.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
And our final item this evening is our new budget direction to the interim superintendent. We generally do not issue budget direction during this time of year. We are generally in the process of our budget where we are deliberating the superintendent's proposed budget and then working on proposing the school board's budget. But as we shared at the beginning of this meeting, the state of the local economy is significantly different based on the consequences of the pandemic. And so we now are preparing for what that may look like. And we are working with the county to understand their new numbers and figures. And I believe most of the Arlington community has heard that Mr. Schwartz will be bringing forward a new budget to his county. And it's hopeful that we'll have it sometime in the next week or so. So this evening, what we did when we canceled the public hearing is develop new budget direction to our superintendent to reflect the current state of affairs. And so we worked on that as a board in a very short time frame, but we believe that this direction will provide our interim superintendent the flexibility that she needs to bring forth a budget that reflects the current, again, local state of the economy during this unprecedented coronavirus pandemic. So I'm going to ask for the motion, and then I'll ask for comments. And are there any questions on what I just shared prior to me asking for motion? Dr. Katanen, Ms. Van Doren. Okay, so may I have a motion, please?
Yes, Chair Talento, I have a motion. I move that the school board direct the superintendent to prepare a revised proposed fiscal year 2021 budget that maintains our growing 28,000 student school system. The superintendent should present the board with a revised proposed budget at its first meeting in April, or once sufficient information is available regarding projected county, state, and federal revenues. The revised proposed budget should continue to consider our school system's needs going forward and be consistent with APS's mission, vision, core values, and strategic plan. The proposed budget should reflect our new reality and the current state of economic affairs of Arlington County due to the coronavirus pandemic and its effect on our local economy. We understand that our conditions are changing daily and that the superintendent may need to bring us various budget scenarios from which we can select, given evolving local, state, and federal revenue calculations. This budget direction replaces the budget direction approved on October 3rd, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Colleagues, do you have any comments on this motion before we take action? I'll start with Dr. Katanen. Do you have any comments?
No.
Okay, Ms. Van Doren?
I do. Thank you very much for acting so quickly. I'm glad that we were all able to put that together. I just wanted to comment that from this one board member's perspective, I was very involved as a citizen when we did the budget, when we had to consider major adjustments after the recession over 10 years ago. And I think we'll have various considerations that are similar to that this time. And so I just wanted to be clear that I'm very focused on supporting our employees so that they can support our students in achieving the goals we set forward in the plans that you've mentioned in the motion, that we really consider using our reserves to the maximum extent possible and collaborate with the county to ensure that we get through this interim period while sustaining our operations as strongly as possible. So that's just my perspective as one board member as we go forward, and I want to make sure that particularly our staff knows that we know how vitally important they are to the operation of our system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. Mr. Goldstein, do you have any comments? Ms. O'Grady?
I just want to echo Ms. Van Doren's comments and say that this is going, as we continue to go through this very interesting time, this is another element of that. And as I said earlier this evening, this is going to be a time when we're going to have to work together. We're going to have to collaborate with our county and come together as a community as we face uncertain budget times. So I'm saddened that we're going to have to look at potentially tough budget times, and I hope the community will support us as we try to figure out a way to move forward in this unprecedented moment.
And I just want to again thank my board for working together to pull this together in such a short time frame. As most of you know, we had planned last week to have our public hearing on the superintendent's proposed budget, where we knew that would likely change. But as things continue to develop and things continue to look less, well, let's just be frank, look more dire than what they were the day before, we decided to cancel this. So then it put us in a new place. And I just want to really thank my board for coming together and pulling this off prior to our meeting tonight, considering that we are unclear when we'll be able to meet again in person, and with the recognition that right now our next meeting is scheduled for April 16th. So I just want to thank you all for that. And And now we will act on our motion. Ms. Elliott, would you please do the roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Again, those in favor, please say aye, and any opposed, say nay. Mr. Goldstein?
Aye.
Dr. Cannonen?
Aye.
Ms. O'Grady?
Aye.
Ms. Talento?
Aye.
Ms. Van Doren?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. So we are now in new business. Board members, is there any new business? Okay. So I just wish everyone that you stay safe and healthy. Do your best to stay at home. Support your families, yourselves. And there's a lot of resources online that you can access for mental health care and for instructional care for your students. So please keep that in mind. And seeing that there is no new business, this meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a good night.